You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Inside and outside the Fox 59 CBS 4 podcast studio. Welcome to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast alongside Matt Adams. I'm Dave Griffiths, calling it remotely for this late season episode of the Blue Zone. And there's no way I was missing this one because, boy, do we have something to talk about. Just the situation the Colts find themselves in after what happened last week in Denver. It was less than pretty. Some might call it ugly. It was less than good. Some might call it bad. And I would not disagree with either of those assessments. But I know Matt had the joyous job of recapping things just this past week after the game, and we'll certainly get into that a little bit more. But the long and the short of it now, Matt, is the last three games of the season, they're games that obviously the Colts should win, but they go into them now with, instead of about a 50% chance of making the playoffs, if they had beaten the Broncos, it's about a 6 or a 7% chance now. So it's all but over the postseason hopes for this year's version of the Colts.
Well, even if they'd won the game, they need a little bit of help. You know, they need some stuff to fall their way, but their margin of error there was a margin of error there. Now there's none, like zero. They have to win out 100%. They've got to win out, and then they have to rely on other teams to lose games. And they really, honestly, they need multiple teams to stumble, because what they need to get into is a situation in which you have a multi-team tie, because then if they win out, then they would have the best conference record. That would put them in the playoffs ahead of some of these other teams. There's a wacky scenario in which the Ravens and the Chargers and the Broncos and the Dolphins all finish with 9 wins, and the Colts end up with the 5th seed, because if those games fall that way, then they would end up with the best conference record and would be the best seed. Their best choice their best chance outside of that is they really have to hope that the Chargers lose 2 out of their last 3 games. They end up with the same record. They don't have any common head-to-head on that one, so it goes to conference record. The Colts would have the best conference record there, and they would sneak in that last playoff seed.
Well, that's hope springs eternal.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is too, again, they should have just taken care of business and beaten Denver. We wouldn't have to talk about these ridiculous scenarios. But the Chargers close out the season. They do play at Denver, but then they're at New England and they're at the Raiders. And those are two, they're road games, but super, you look at the Colts schedule, what's there for them at the end, it's not very strong. That's not exactly a very strong end of the season for, it's not like they're playing the Chiefs or the Ravens, or there's a head-to-head game there that would help the Colts get an advantage. It's so remote right now.
The crazy part of this Colts loss is, I know you remember it, Matt, and I'm sure our listeners, as I mentioned it, will hearken back, our loyal listeners who tune in every week, that just last week during the bye, like, we were talking about how the Colts had won the past couple games, not like blowing people out statistically or anything, but winning situationally. And you look at some parts of this game against Denver, and it's like, well, the Colts had 3 takeaways on defense, and they only allowed less than 200 yards. So usually that's a win. But no, because they completely blew this game situationally. There were key penalties. You look toward the late game where a penalty kept the Denver Broncos offense on the field. They turned the ball over 5 times themselves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once a play that it's tough to say it rivals the fake punt, because nothing ever rivals the infamous fake punt against the Patriots.
It's in the conversation though, man.
But exactly, that's what the Colts fans' mind goes to immediately when something that terrible blesses our vision. But that happened. And then the special teams long return as well, that led the Denver Broncos offense basically to points there as well.
Yeah, an offense that they had done a very good job of limiting yardage, getting them to turn over, and situationally, the defense won some of those matchups when the offense some of the games this year, the offense has put the defense in some really tough places, and the defense has not been able to respond. They responded, especially like in the first 3 quarters of this game, with a 3-and-out, stopping the Broncos, and then the offense goes to a 3-and-out, gives up the 61-yard punt return, sets the Broncos up on the 15-yard line, and it's just there's not a lot of defenses in the league that can just all the time just do this over and over and over again and be successful.
Yeah. And once again, like I know that I seem like I say this every week. I know that people have been calling for Gus Bradley's head since week 2. And in some reason I get it, because you hate the soft zone and that just gives up yards upon yards and hope that things work out in the end. But it was not his fault this week, man.
Nope.
You can't blame him one bit for what happened out there. Not one. Like this falls on Shane Steichen. If you're going to look at one coach specifically, it is on him. And like I'm looking back at that trick play, and like I don't hate the timing of it. I really don't. I think that's a fine time in a game for a trick play. You just fell behind. Your offense is sputtering a bit. You need a boost. Like that's a good time. You're on the road trying to catch a team off guard. Like all those things. Like it's a fine time to do it. This isn't like Dan Campbell, who will do it if he looks down at his watch and sees that I don't know, and sees that it's an even minute, during the day, and it's time for a trick play. No, this is a fine time for a trick play, but the execution somehow was absolutely terrible, and it's when you try trick play, things need to work, man. Like things need to be set up well. Like you need the right look to do it of the defense, and then you need the person who is the most important cog in the trick play, in this case, Adonai Mitchell.
A.D. Mitchell, yeah.
A.D. Mitchell, to make the right decision. And this, like, to me, we've talked about this before too. Players, not plays.
Yep, absolutely. It's been a big conversation this week.
And Shane Steichen putting the wrong player in a position to try to make a play. He is so confident in his scheme that he will put the wrong player in the position, the quote-unquote wrong player, it obviously turns into the wrong player because you see the result.
You saw what happened. Yeah, right. You saw the execution.
Right. We have the benefit of hindsight in making this claim. Put the wrong player in the position to make a play, and it blows up in your face. So it's just a lesson that he has not learned. And it's got to frustrate the heck out of Colts fans watching it over and over again. It's what turns into some of the most important plays of his tenure in Indianapolis. Where are you sure that you want to put the team's future in the hands of A.D. Mitchell? What is it that he has done to earn that trust? And I'm sure Shane would say, he does it in practice. We execute it well. It was the right time to do it. Blah blah blah. Colts fans shouldn't care about anything that happens in practice. Look at what he's done in games. Look at what A.D. Mitchell has done. It's not significant. You're putting the game in the hands of a rookie wide receiver who has struggled quite a bit. I understand continuing to give the guy chances and work him along and trying to develop him, not just completely shut him out of the offense and ruin his confidence completely. Like, that's fine. But giving him such an important, pivotal role at an important, pivotal time of the game is a completely baffling decision. So again, like I said, players, not plays. I think the play call was it was a fine play call at the right time to do a trick play then, but just what the execution was and the personnel who was kind of in charge of it was just baffling and incredibly frustrating, I'm sure, for most of the people listening.
Well, and the problem, you're right. And I mean, we saw the Colts call a flea flicker a couple of weeks ago, and that didn't go well, and that was Jonathan Taylor pitching the ball back to Richardson, and he bounced it. So, obviously that's not how they pulled it off in practice. But that's a flea flicker. That should be a pretty easy thing to pull off.
You would think.
You would think. And then here you've got Mitchell, and it seemed like he hesitated for a second. It was the slow developing play, and then he lets go of that ball, and it's just like the Zapruder film. The ball, and you just see that defensive player come off of Benito comes off of the offensive lineman, and you're like, oh my gosh, I think that's that's going all the way back. So I know, again, like you said, they practice it, but why is A.D. Mitchell the player in this situation here? If it's not there immediately, then just take off, run the ball, get 2 yards. That is better than just the stomach turning consequence of what happened there.
Throw it out of bounds, for crying out loud.
Throw it out of bounds, absolutely.
Like take a 5-yard loss.
Hey, I don't care if you get an intentional grounding penalty in that situation. Anything is better than the result of the play as it happened.
It's not a pick six. So yeah, really a terrible look at a terrible time. And as Nick Benito took off down the field, so really took off the Colts' reasonable playoff hopes with it. The Broncos go on to win 31-13. Just like you look at that font and you're like, how did it get there? And again, like I said, it's situational football. It's bad plays at bad times. It's turning the ball over 5 times. It's giving up a big special teams play, and everything just crumbling.
Even in another gaff, and this is late. This is when the game's already decided, but it would have been a 2-touchdown game. They allowed a field goal. They got to stop. They allowed a field goal, and then they line up offsides on the field goal. And so Denver declines that penalty. They end up scoring a touchdown that gives them their 31 points. And it's that situational stuff. And I was looking back today at Steichen's press conference when they hired him, and he talked about his pillars and its character and its consistency and its preparation and its persistence or relentlessness, and like those elements are missing week in and week out from this Colts team, and it's baffling.
Mm-hmm. All those things I wanted to talk about because I feel like there's a little bit of analysis, behind them. Jonathan Taylor dropping the ball at the 1-foot line. There's no analysis that goes with it.
No. That's just a stupid play. Yeah.
It is the dumbest play in football. It is the dumbest play in football. And there's nothing else I can say to that. Like this is your player that's supposed to be your star offensive player, and he just drops the ball.
And this is an offense that desperately needed. We talked about this. Where are the big plays from Taylor? Because that's what they wanted to do. He's their home run guy. He's going to make that play. They get Bo Nix. They get another turnover from Bo Nix to start the second half. The first possession of the Broncos in the second half there, they get a turnover. The defense does. I think it was Womack in that case. 2 plays later, Jonathan Taylor's walking into the end zone, but he forgets to take the ball with him, and that just that is the turning point of the entire game and probably for the rest of the season. I know that the trick play is sort of salt in the wound, but the Jonathan Taylor's decision to just drop the ball, the compulsion to not carry the ball in through the end zone for some of these players, as we saw this in another game this week as well, and we've seen it multiple times during the season. I do not understand. I know that if I were the player, I would be holding on that ball until I ran into the wall that's past the end zone, because I want to make sure that I scored my points.
It's great. Like Barry Sanders always handed the ball to the referee. Emmitt Smith kept every touchdown that he ever had. So like he just held on to the ball. He kept the ball, brought it back to the sideline, and like numbered it. Like I don't know. Maybe we're too old school. Man.
Could be.
Yeah, we think about scoring of the touchdown and making that
or spike the ball, jump into the middle of the end zone and spike the ball. That is also fine.
Yes, have the Anthony Richardson 360 spike. That's fantastic. We love it. It's awesome. Like any of those choices, just not the one that you're picking. Not that one. It's less than good.
And you did you travel to this one or were you watching
this was Whitlick? So
Whitlick? Okay,
we can blame Chris Whitlick.
Okay. But I was watching the broadcast obviously, and so the Colts team's out there for the extra point, and then they cut to the commercial, and I'm like, oh gosh, they're reviewing this, aren't they? And of course, when they cut back to the commercial, they missed the review part. They didn't review it during the commercial break, obviously, because they were in commercial. And when they come back to the wide shot, I'm like, that sure looks like a defensive alignment that's out there on the field. They overturned this darn thing, didn't they? And then they got to their analysis afterwards. It's just like, why haven't they kicked the extra point yet? Oh gosh, they're gonna look at this, aren't they?
Yes, they are. And then all Colts Nation found out together the glory of that play. So I don't think we need to talk about that anymore. Mercifully, no. There have been a lot of folks doing similar podcasts like this. Our fine friends at the Indy Star, specifically, I know, but others as well, that have kind of taken this turn of events, and you hear it on talk radio as well, to give a good analysis of the state of the team, like the state of Shane Steichen, Chris Ballard, Anthony Richardson, and the future of this franchise. I don't want to get into that too much today, Matt, and I think you'll agree with me because Mike Chappell's not here.
Yeah. We need Chap for that for sure.
I can give my thoughts, obviously, and you can too. Like if the one of those three that is the most stable is Shane Steichen, in my opinion, that has the most likely to return next year. But to get on this podcast a really good discussion of all of those variables, I think we should wait for him to come back whenever that is. So you on board with that?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good idea, and just in general, it's I think that's probably the best way to approach that.
Then we'll do that. All right. The Colts and the Giants in Week 17 is going to be a 1 p.m. kickoff on Sunday, December 29th. They were one of 5 games that was possibly going to be flexed to Saturday. And if the past couple of seasons had been any indication, the Colts had been getting flexed to Saturday.
Yep.
And I was on one of them. I was on the infamous trip to Minnesota, the 33-0 trip to Minnesota that got flexed to a Saturday. So I remember that one not so fondly. There was one, I think, that was the trip to New York. Was it? No. I forget. I'm not going to remember it. But anyway,
I think there was a Pittsburgh game that got flexed.
Yes, that was last year.
And then the Texans game got flexed as well.
Yes, at the end of last year, right? To try to, since that was basically a win and in game. It was a win and in game.
Yeah, it was.
But anyway, the Colts keep getting flexed, but not this one. And you could probably thank the loss to the Broncos for that, because all of a sudden the Colts have significantly less national interest after their playoff chances dropped from a possible 50-51% down to 6 or 7%. But anyway, the Colts and Giants is 1 p.m. Sunday kickoff, kind of like normal. We'll see who starts at center in that game. Ryan Kelly was not back last week. He told us when we interviewed him on Friday that he was hopeful that he'd be back. I have a good feeling that he knew that he was not going to be back at that time.
Probably.
And was giving us the little bit of a runaround, which is fine, which he is.
Hey, it's his prerogative, man. Yeah.
That's his right to do, I guess. But it was Danny Pinter who got the start at center over Tanner Bortolini, perhaps after I had pointed out in the Colts Blue Zone podcast that he had his last 4 starts at center. He had won those games. And unfortunately, they reverted back to what had happened in his first start at center in his career and lost last week. So Danny Pinter's win streak at center has unfortunately come to an end. He had a couple of bad holding penalties himself, which were less than good for the Colts in that specific scenario.
Oh, the garbage of the offense in the second half, man. Yes. It was bad.
That was it. It was garbage. It was absolute garbage. And look, we said last week again that Denver has a really good defense, and Vance Joseph is a very good defense.
Absolutely,
very good. And that defense was humming, and it hummed all the way to a 31-13 result. One thing that Shane Steichen has done very well is the opening drive and getting a good script going. And he did that again. 10-play drive, touchdown at the end of it. It was a great look to start this game. It really was. And then just very much nothing afterward, which is unfortunately a reality that they have seen all too often as well. That after that opening drive, things sputter a little bit. And all the preparation they did throughout the week led to a great opening plan. But then you punch them, they punch back, and you don't have an answer for it. So that's something that needs to get better, period. It just has to. And you can't only have one drive where you figure that you can rely upon your offense to score points. And then after that, it's a crapshoot at best. Like, there just needs to be more consistency. We go back to that pillar, consistency.
Well, and I hate to go back to it, but a couple of their top line guys that they paid money to keep around, Taylor, and then also Michael Pittman Jr. killer fumble that that was the drive right after the overturned touchdown, and you cannot have these things happen, man.
Nope, definitely not. Alec Pierce also has a concussion. We'll see if he clears protocol before the game. Needs some practices in order to do that. Limited practice, full practice, and being cleared by an independent neurologist. All those things need to happen. So we'll just have to keep track of him through the Colts injury reports throughout the week. and to be determined. And Alec Pierce has been probably the Colts' best offensive player this year. And you could make an argument maybe for Josh Downs when he's been in. Certainly wasn't last week when he returned to action, or when he was playing. But Alec Pierce has certainly been the most explosive, and maybe one of the most explosive players in the NFL as well. So be very helpful to have him back there. There's one guy you can actually count on to seems like this year to do what you have planned for him to do in the game plan. The Titans have a couple injured players themselves, a couple in the secondary. L'Jarius Sneed, I thought he was a Colt.
Yeah, former Colt target,
former Colt,
allegedly.
Sneed,
yeah,
in the secondary. Condre Diggs as well, both on injured reserve. Their center Lloyd Cushenberry is 2, and wide receiver Treylon Burks. All of those players on injured reserve right now. And we touched on this earlier. If the playoffs started today, the Colts would not be in. They'd still be tied one step out because the Dolphins are also 6-8, and the Bengals now are also 6-8. So that's a 3-way tie there. And Matt, as you mentioned, the Colts actually have a pretty decent conference record, in spite of their being out of the playoffs at the moment. So they hold tiebreakers, and they're good tiebreakers. But being 2-3 games back of the teams that are in the wild card right now is just a really, really far bridge with 3 games left.
I think the Colts are 5-5 for their conference record, and it's just that if they win out, then that becomes an 8-5 conference record,
right.
And those other teams are around the same level, 5-4, 5-5, and so obviously that elevates the Colts. But again, they need lots of people to lose lots of games in order to get there.
Right, and an unlikely scenario. This is starting to resemble the 29 season when they needed a lot to happen, and then by the end of the year, they just didn't have it anymore, and they finished off the year. They do face the Titans this week, 3-11. I think that I have, in the past couple weeks, at least mentioned once that the Titans were starting to look better. That is not true anymore, especially after last week. They are very much struggling and coming apart the way the Colts offense came apart in the second half of the Broncos game. But as a team, they are coming apart. Losers of 3 straight right now. Whatever little momentum they had in the early or the mid part of the season there has certainly dissipated. Will Levis has about 1,900 passing yards, 12 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and that might be all he gets this year. And that honestly might be all he gets as a member of the Tennessee Titans, as ESPN's Jeremy Fowler is reporting that Mason Rudolph is going to start against the Colts, even though the Titans, at least as we're taping this podcast right now, have not confirmed that to be true. Rudolph in 5 games has 1,000 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and he played last week as well, at least part of last week.
Yeah, I think, because I sort of derisively refer to Will Levis sometimes as the human turnover machine at work, and it got him in trouble in that game last week, and so they yanked him and they put Rudolph in, and I think it sounds to me, we'll have to see, but it sounds to me like they've seen enough.
Yep, it sounds the same to me. And the Titans, if we go back to our offseason discussion about all the teams in the AFC South, the Titans did a lot more than we kind of expected them to, I think, in the free agent market. They tried to
yes, they did.
Not match the Texans, because it was tough to match what the Texans were doing, but they tried to keep up. And the Colts did not try to keep up in the free agent market, not at all. They signed a backup defensive tackle and a backup quarterback. And these other teams were trying to make some moves to compete. And the Titans would say that they gave Will Levis an opportunity to compete, and he has not lived up to those expectations. So it is entirely possible that the Will Levis era in Tennessee is over, and Tennessee is going to be at a point where they are kind of reshaping the direction of their franchise this offseason. They have some good running backs. Tony Pollard's averaging 4.3 yards per carry. He has 5 touchdowns, 39 catches for 233 yards. Tajay Spears had a really good game last week.
I don't think that yardage is correct there for Tajay Spears.
Matt, son of a gun. But yeah, I don't think it is either, because he had like a ton of.
Actually, it is. I pulled the stats back up here on ESPN. It's 190 yards in 10 games, 3.5 average.
Well, he did really well last week. He had a very good week in a loss. Calvin Ridley, 53 catches, 779 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was famously held to squat, I believe, when the Colts played them last, and he was less than happy about that result. Nick Westbrook-Akine, IU's own, 23 catches, 393 yards, 8 touchdowns. He's like Chris Carter.
All he does is catch touchdowns, baby.
That's right. The good old days of ESPN, the golden age of watching those highlights. Tyler Boyd, 35 catches, 356 yards. Tight end Chigo Okonkwo, 38 catches, 356 yards, 2 touchdowns. Out of that group, guys that scare you, guys that are good NFL players, there's a bunch of them. Like Pollard's a solid NFL player. Ridley, Westbrook, Boyd, all very solid NFL players. So that's, again, I think, Matt, that makes sense that the Titans look at what Will Levis has done this year, and they're like, well,
I mean, they brought in Tyler Boyd and Calvin Ridley, and you're thinking, I know, Ridley's a number one. Boyd had several good seasons, out in Cincinnati. So I thought that this, would be you would think this would be a little bit better of an offense, especially bringing in Tony Pollard. And then Tajay Spears is a really good change of pace type of back. And it's just the numbers, like we'll get to the rankings, the offensive numbers for the Titans there in the, bottom 5 in almost every category.
Top tacklers, linebacker Kenneth Murray Jr. has 93, safety Imani Hooker, 66 tackles, cornerback Jarvis Brownlee Jr. has 59. Sacks, Harold Landry, once again, there he is, leading the team, 8 sacks for Harold. Arden Key at linebacker, 6.5 sacks. Defensive tackle Jeffrey Simmons has 4, and Imani Hooker leads the team with 4 interceptions. Let's get to those rankings because they are not impressive, really, for either team. Titans are 27th in scoring offense. They're averaging 18 points per game. Colts are 23rd, averaging 20 points per game. Titans are 27th in total offense, just like scoring, averaging 301 yards per game. Colts are 21st, 311 yards per game. Titans are 26th in passing yards, 190 per game. Colts are down in 27th, also 190 per game. Titans are 19th in rushing yards, their best asset on offense, 110 yards per game, 4.2 yards per carry. Colts are 13th in rushing yards, about 121 per game and 4.5 per carry. So both of these offenses, not exactly world beaters. The Colts have been more the big play threat. Titans, not as much the big play threat, but once they get cooking with Pollard, then that's what has led to some of their success this year. Defensively, Titans are tied for 29th in points allowed per game. They're giving up 27 points per game, which is kind of stunning to me after you look further.
Yeah, you look at the other numbers, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Much better. Colts are 21st in points allowed per game, allowing 23 points per game. Titans are 12th in rushing yards, so they're in the top half of the league, averaging 115 yards per game given up, 4.1 per carry. Colts are down in 30th in the NFL in rushing yards allowed, 141 yards per game, 4.5 yards per carry. Those numbers still are gaudy. Titans are 3rd in passing yards per game, only 182 yards passing allowed per game, which is a pretty good number. Colts are 23rd in the NFL, 224 yards per game. Titans are 2nd in yards allowed, 297 yards given up per game. Colts are down in 28th, 366 yards per game.
And now, Dave, you're going to see why they are where they are as far as offense and points given up is concerned.
The Titans are minus 13 in turnover ratio. Minus
13.
That is a massive number. They have forced 16 turnovers, which is not bad.
It's right kind of middle of the package. Yeah.
And they have turned it over themselves 29 times. It's those 12 interceptions by Will Levis, 5 more from Mason Rudolph is 17, and 12 fumbles lost on the season as well. A couple of those are Will Levis fumbles too. The Colts, after last week, losing to being -2 last week, are -4 for the season in turnover ratio. They have forced 21 turnovers and surrendered 24.
Yeah. That for some reason that number didn't get fixed. Yeah, it should be 25 to 21.
Yep. So turnovers matter, which which is a stupid thing to say because it's so obvious. But you look at the Titans and makes it so obvious that they're great they're second in yards allowed, and yet they can't stop the other teams from scoring because they've had situations, Matt, very much like the Colts faced last week. That
you get in bad field position, and you just cannot constantly overcome that.
Yep. Even good defenses put up with their back against the wall over and over and over again are going to give up points. I want to see where the Titans rank in turnover ratio. Hang on, they're 30th in the NFL right now. It looks like only the Browns and the Raiders are worse than them.
Teams you don't want to be in company with because that's a lot of turnovers.
Yep, it is quite a few. Those teams are not having good seasons.
And it's not like the Colts are great. I mean, they've had 20 turnovers, and it's been really, really bad the last couple of weeks.
Right. No, I'm not. This is not like a people in glass houses type scenario.
Exactly. Yeah.
But you have the
but 29 still. I mean, when I saw minus 13 when going through things, and then I saw 29 turnovers, I was like, "Holy cow, that is a lot. That's so many."
It just shows you that if you turn the ball over a lot, you lose a lot, and the Colts learned that hard lesson last week themselves. You move on, time of possession. Colts are 32nd.
Yep, back there at the bottom.
Yay! Woo!
We did it.
Bottom. Yay, guys! 26 minutes, 41 seconds on the year. Titans are 10th in time possession, 30 minutes, 48 seconds. Again, that goes to a point I was making earlier. When they run the ball well, they do well.
Absolutely.
Offense. And they control the ball. They don't turn it over. And that's again why again they're near the top of time possession is they have a good defense that gets them the ball back, and they're and the opposing offense is when they score, they're short fields, so they score quickly,
right?
Because the defense takes the ball away. So you look at again a team that has second in yards allowed and 10th in time of possession. You're like, oh, that's got to be a pretty good team, right? Wrong, because you are minus 13 in turnover ratio. And that's what the Titans are this year. Just a team that is struggling mightily to hang on to the ball. And because of that, they are having a bad time at the end of the day, most of the time. Let's take a look at the odds for this week, odds and ends. Let's see. Colts are a 3.5-point favorite at home inside Lucas Oil Stadium on Sunday at 1:00 against these Titans. And let's see, the over-under is about 42, it looks like, 42.5. So a nice low-scoring game with this Titans defense that is playing, well, that doesn't allow yards, at least. I can't say they're playing great because they're giving up 27 points per game, but they're playing as well as you could hope for if you're over there. Anyway, so expecting something along the lines of an incredibly pretty 22-19 ball game there. If you have tickets to come to Lucas Oil Stadium and watch the Colts this weekend. If you do, God bless you, and I hope that you get something good to see with these two teams out there. But I will. Let's see. Let us give our predictions. I'll go first, and then Matt can go and wrap us up there with predictions. But I don't see the Colts losing to the Titans. Like I know that there's a lot of doom and gloom, and this podcast has had some of it too. Let's be honest about where the Colts are right now, because that loss in Denver really did a number.
It did
on your psyche, and understandably so. It did a number on the Colts' chances this season, understandably so. I think there were still some positive signs in recent weeks, and I still believe what the Colts had told us at the beginning of the season, that Anthony Richardson is going to go through ups and downs as a young, inexperienced quarterback. So that was a down. Like you can't just keep thinking that the roller coaster's
right. He did well this week, so he's going to do well for the rest of all time is not realistic.
It goes back down, and last week it went back down. Like he had back-to-back road fourth quarter comeback victories. That's a great peak. It is. It's awesome. But the downs are coming with him. That they are. And until how can I put this? And until he gets more experience, you don't know if that is going to subside. You just don't. And and right now it's bad. Like, it hurts. It sucks if you're a Colts fan. Absolutely, it does. But this is exactly what the this is the meal that was ordered. Was a young, dynamic unicorn who maybe in year 3 turns into what Josh Allen was in year 3, and who is now going to be the MVP of the league. So, and so yeah, all that to say, like this is there are ups and downs. So I'm not just throwing the Colts out the window for 2024. If they lose this week, that would be a disaster, an absolute disaster, at home to a 3-11 Titans team that has lost 3 games in a row. But I'm not picking that. I think the Colts are better than the Titans. I think they win. I think they win 24-15. The defense played well last week, and other than 2 weeks ago, I think it's been playing pretty well overall. I know that's a little bit of a what's it called? A different opinion than a lot of people have. But I look at the way the defense is playing, and I don't overly hate it. And last week I think was kind of at almost their best this entire year. They just got dealt a horrible hand by the offense, and couldn't. And 3 turnovers didn't matter, which is crazy to say that 3 turnovers didn't matter. But I'll go 24-15, like I said. And the Colts keep their very, very slim hopes alive for one more week, heading to New York after Christmas for Week 17. And we'll see what happens down the stretch this season. Matt, what do you think?
I'm going to go 31-24 with the Colts kind of busting out an angry team at home, trying to make things right here and make a push for the season. If they are this prepared, resilient team, then that's the kind of effort you want to see from them.
Yep. And you would love to see an angry, determined team, right?
Yeah, if they come in and it's just another slow start with the team just not showing much bounce or energy out there, then these guys are kind of in the can for the season after what happened in Denver.
The Titans' offense should be ready to completely give up. They really should. Like, you're going to Mason Rudolph,
right,
to close out your season. Like, can you imagine that meeting? Hey guys, we're going to stick with Mason the rest of the year. All right. Let's go.
Yeah, we're 3-11, and I think probably the only thing that concerns me, and because we've seen it all season, if a team has a standout running back, they can do well against this Colts defense. And if they're not able to kind of bottle up, they can't get a lead quick on, and they're allowed to sort of sustain with Pollard, that could cause some problems for the Colts.
Yeah, so the first game against the Colts, Pollard had 93 yards on 17 carries. So that was a pretty decent day for him, and scored 1 touchdown as well. The defense held Will Levis to just 95 yards passing, 16-27 from the field, had 1 touchdown thrown and 1 interception. Of course, this game was highlighted by the Michael Pittman Jr., the 10-yard touchdown from Joe Flacco there in the 4th quarter to really take the lead with 7.5 minutes to go. And then the defense was able to shut the door on a couple of drives late in the game. So that was Michael Pittman Jr. playing on a bad back, which he's had for this entire season.
Whole season.
It's hard to evaluate what Pittman has done this year. I know that he's getting some criticism, as he completely should, for fumbling the ball. Like, you can't fumble the ball. It doesn't matter where, what your situation is with your body as a player. Like, you can't let go of the ball. That's something that's virtually unforgivable. But it's hard to evaluate him based on the situation that he is in. And it sucks that he just had the contract extension last year, So I understand why Colts fans could look at this year and be really frustrated with him. I get it. I do think this injury is fairly serious. I mean, they were considering putting him on injured reserve.
Right. Yeah. I don't have any problem with, I understand with Pitt what the problem has been this year. It's why he's not been able to get, downfield and that sort of stuff. It was just, you have one of your team captains, Jonathan Taylor, fumbling the ball at the goal line, and then a couple plays later, you've got another one of your guys you've just signed to extension, team captain, and again, the defensive player made a great play on the ball. He got that helmet right where it needed to be, but you just cannot have those things happen in these types of games.
Yep. The Titans as a team rushed for 146 yards against the Colts in that first game and 5.2 yards per carry total. So that was what killed them. They had 11 penalties in that game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're just I don't track the penalty rankings, and I should go back and look at those. But that's the problem with the Titans. I mean, penalties and then obviously the turnovers. It a sloppy football team, and those are the times kinds of teams that end up 3-11 and with a probably having a decent draft pick. And there is a conversation to be had. We won't have it here, but like, would you rather be 6-8 and have an outside shot at the playoffs, or would you rather have this 3-11 season where things were pretty much cooked a couple of weeks ago and it's just a miserable football team to watch?
Well, would you rather have the 2022 Colts or would you rather have this team?
Exactly. Yeah.
You could ask Colts fans that right now. Would you rather watch 2022 season again, or do you want to watch this one? So you have your answer. If you answer that question yourself out there, I will let you do it and not criticize you either way, because I think there are some positives and some negatives to it on both sides. But yeah, you mentioned penalties. The Colts are actually the third fewest penalized team in the league. They're averaging less than 6 penalties per game, 5.7. The Titans are 31st in the league in penalties per game. They're 8.3 per game.
Yep. Sloppy football team, poorly disciplined, and that's going to lose you some games. And I think that's why last week, especially with Colts on offense, the penalties really stuck out, because they have played pretty cleanly for the most part this season. But boy, when they do get them, and this is every team really in football, but sometimes they are just so noticeable. You turned a first and what looked like a first and was going to be a 2nd and 5 into a 1st and 20. And that happened a couple of times in that second half. And listen, just the way the Colts are built, that is not something they easily overcome with the way the offense is currently structured.
It's kind of weird. Like, I'm quickly looking at just penalties and the stats as I pulled up that stat. And this year, like, there are more penalties per game. It's quite remarkable than in previous years. Like, teams are averaging between 5 and 8.5 penalties per game. In previous years, it's more like between 4 and 7.5.
That's a pretty significant. That's a pretty significant bump.
It is. It's like 2 penalties more per
Yeah.
game, probably. So if you're looking about like 1 more per team. So at least just by these stats, that's what it looks like. I don't have the specific numbers in front of me, but who knows exactly why that is. I'm sure there are some reasons and some things that the NFL has tried to focus on. And
it's probably the illegal. What's the penalty? The one that they keep calling Braden Smith for.
Just not lining up on the line of scrimmage.
Not being on the line of scrimmage. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that has happened a lot this year. Not just the Colts. I mean, the first game of the year, they flagged guys 3 or 4 times for that.
Yes, it's true. Like, like the Chiefs guy, Juwan, what's his name? I forget, but got fouled like 3 times in a row in that opening week. And you're like banging your head against the wall if you're an NFL fan watching it. Like, what's going on here? What are you doing? So why aren't you just taking a step forward? But anyway, but yeah, that's I think that's what we'll deliver for this week. Colts Titans broadcast on CBS 4 if you're in Central Indiana this Sunday, 1 p.m. kickoff. If you're at Lucas Oil Stadium, well, I hope they give you something to enjoy. I hope that this is a high in the roller coaster season of the 2024 Indianapolis Colts, and Anthony Richardson can give the fans something to ooh and ah about there on the turf at Lucas Oil Stadium. You can read Mike Chappell's work online, fox59.com, cbs4indy.com. Follow him on Twitter at mchappell51. Matt Adams is at Statomatti. I'm Dave Griffiths at DaveG_sports. You can follow us collectively at Colts Blue Zone. We appreciate you listening, and we'll see you next week on the Colts Blue Zone Podcast.